The city had its own heartbeat, measured in the hum of traffic, the chatter of cafe patios, and the neon signs that blinked to life after dusk. Evelyn Hart moved through it quietly, always observing. She was 26, a freelance writer who worked mostly in coffee shops, tapping away at her laptop while life unfolded around her. People often called her thoughtful, but she preferred the word curious. To her, every stranger carried a story, and she liked to imagine what those stories might be. Her closest friend, Thomas Rayner, had grown up beside her in the same leafy suburb before they both moved into the city. Thomas was a software engineer, practical and grounded, with a warmth that drew people easily to him. He'd been Evelyn's anchor for years, Sunday brunches, late-night calls, the one she turned to when her world felt unsteady. What Evelyn didn't fully realize was that Thomas carried a quiet, patient love for her that had never faded since their teenage years. The city changed, however, when Adrian Cole appeared. He was new to her building, new to their social circles, new to the places she frequented. He was an architect, his career on the rise, his smile carrying an ease that made him instantly likable. Evelyn first noticed him at the corner cafe, sketching on a pad rather than staring at a screen. Something about his quiet intensity drew her in. When she introduced herself, awkwardly, almost apologetically, he looked up with eyes that seemed amused, as if he already knew the effect he had on people. Evelyn, he repeated, as though trying the name on his tongue. That's a name that belongs in a story. She laughed, but the words lingered longer than they should have. That same afternoon, Thomas texted her, "Dinner tonight? Your choice." She smiled at the familiarity, not realizing that the threads of her life were about to knot into a far more complicated weave. Thomas was already waiting at their favorite noodle place when Evelyn arrived. He stood when she entered, his smile genuine, his eyes soft in that way that always made her feel safe. "You look tired," he said as she slid into the booth. "I was writing all day," she replied, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Deadlines don't forgive. They ate, laughing about old school memories, about Thomas's impossible boss, about Evelyn's neighbor who played saxophone terribly at odd hours. With Thomas, conversations always felt easy, effortless. He knew her quirks, the way she tapped her fingers on the table when thinking, the way she never finished her tea. But that night Evelyn mentioned Adrian, casually at first. "There's this new guy at the cafe, an architect. He sketches buildings while drinking his coffee. It's different." Thomas's smile faltered, though he covered it quickly with a sip of beer. "Sounds like he's creative," he said, careful not to sound dismissive. "Yeah," Evelyn replied, eyes unfocused. "There's something about the way he looks at things. Like he sees more than what's there." Thomas changed the subject, but a dull ache settled in his chest. He'd heard her talk about people before, but there was a brightness in her voice this time, a light he couldn't ignore. A week later, Evelyn and Adrian found themselves leaving the cafe at the same time. Rain had started, the kind that blurred streetlights into halos. Adrian offered his umbrella. "You don't have to," she began. "I insist," he said, holding it over her as they walked in the same direction. "Besides, this city is better in the rain." She laughed softly. "You're one of those people who romanticize everything, aren't you?" "Maybe. Or maybe I just notice what's worth noticing." Their shoulders brushed under the small umbrella. Evelyn felt a spark she hadn't expected. When she got home, her phone buzzed. A text from Thomas. "Still up?" "Always," she replied. He called. "Just checking in," he said. His voice was familiar, warm. They talked until past midnight. Yet, as she lay in bed afterward, Evelyn couldn't help but think of Adrian's words. What's worth noticing? Every Sunday, Evelyn and Thomas had brunch at a little diner with chipped mugs and syrup sticky tables. It was their ritual. That Sunday, though, Evelyn arrived with a restless energy. "I've been thinking," she said between bites of pancakes. "Maybe I should write something new. Something less freelance, more personal. Like a novel." Thomas's eyes lit up. "That's amazing. You've always wanted to. What sparked it?" She hesitated. "I guess seeing how Adrian sketches, how he commits to it. It made me realize I've been holding back. Thomas smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. If it pushes you to chase what you want, then it's good. Evelyn reached across the table, touching his hand briefly. You've always believed in me. I always will, he said softly, and for a moment the air between them felt charged with something unspoken. But then the waitress refilled their coffee, and the moment dissolved. Evelyn's days began to split between two worlds. Mornings and afternoons often belonged to Adrian, impromptu walks through the city, conversations about architecture, art, and dreams. Adrian spoke with a confidence that made Evelyn feel braver than she was. Evenings and weekends were still Thomas's territory. Movie nights, grocery runs, shared silences that were just as meaningful as words. With him, she felt grounded. Yet as weeks passed, Evelyn noticed how differently she was with each of them. With Adrian, she was bold, almost reckless. With Thomas, she was safe, cocooned. She wondered if one version was more real than the other, or if both were. One evening, Thomas invited Evelyn to a rooftop bar, the skyline glittering around them. He'd rehearsed what he wanted to say 100 times. You know, he began, staring at the city lights. Sometimes I feel like we've been orbiting each other forever. Evelyn tilted her head. Orbiting? Yeah, like two planets. Always close, never colliding. His throat tightened. Maybe it's time we did. Evelyn's breath caught. She understood what he meant. But before she could reply, her phone buzzed. Adrian's name lit the screen. She hesitated only a second, but it was enough. Thomas saw it. He smiled faintly, hiding the crack in his heart. You should answer, he said, pulling back. She pressed ignore, but the moment was gone. Adrian invited her to his apartment one evening. His walls were lined with sketches, models, unfinished projects. It felt like stepping into his mind. This is incredible, Evelyn whispered, running her fingers over a scale model of a glass tower. It's just work, Adrian said, but she saw the pride in his eyes. They talked for hours, the city outside fading into insignificance. At one point, he brushed a stray hair from her face. The gesture was gentle, but it set her heart racing. Evelyn, he murmured, you make me want to build more than buildings. Her pulse quickened. She didn't answer, afraid of what she might say. Thomas noticed the changes. Evelyn canceled brunch once, then twice. Their movie nights grew fewer. She was still present, but distracted, her laughter delayed, her eyes sometimes elsewhere. One evening, he asked directly, is there someone? Evelyn froze. She wanted to tell him the truth, but the words tangled. I'm just busy, she said, forcing a smile. Thomas nodded, but his jaw tightened. You know you can tell me anything, right? I know, she whispered. But she didn't. It happened almost without warning. Evelyn and Adrian left a gallery late one night. Rain poured, heavier than before. They ran beneath a canopy, laughing breathless. Adrian looked at her, rain glistening in his hair. I don't want to just be your friend, he said, voice low. Before she could answer, he kissed her. It was sudden, urgent, and Evelyn, despite the swirl of guilt, kissed him back. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A message from Thomas, miss you tonight. She didn't open it. Not then. Evelyn lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling. Adrian's kiss lingered on her lips, but so did Thomas's steady presence in her life. She loved them both in different ways. With Thomas, her heart felt steady, safe. With Adrian, it felt alive, electric. But she knew she couldn't keep both. Her reflection in the dark window seemed almost like a stranger. Who am I? She whispered to the silence. Who do I want to be? The city outside pulsed with life, oblivious to the storm inside her chest. Days blurred together, yet Evelyn felt the gap widening between her and Thomas. He still texted daily, jokes, memes, casual check-ins, but his tone had shifted. He no longer suggested plans as often. When they did meet, he seemed careful with his words, as though afraid of what she might not say. One Friday night, Thomas stopped by her apartment with takeout. He knocked, but she didn't answer. Through the door, he could hear laughter, Adrian's laughter. His stomach clenched. He left the food at her doorstep and walked away, shoulders heavy. Inside, Evelyn never heard the knock. She was on the couch with Adrian, their conversation flowing like water. When she finally saw the bag hours later, her heart twisted. She knew who had left it. She sent Thomas a message. "Thank you. I'm sorry I missed you." His reply came minutes later. "No worries. Enjoy your night." But she could read the weight behind those words. The next morning, Evelyn returned to her favorite cafe, laptop in tow. She spotted Thomas there, already seated with his usual mug of black coffee. For a moment she hesitated, but then she forced a smile and walked over. "Hey," she said. He looked up, his smile polite but not as warm as before. "Hey, haven't seen you here much." "I've been working from home more," she lied. They sat together, but the air was different. Their silences, once comfortable, were edged with something unspoken. Evelyn tried to bridge it. "Remember when we used to sit here for hours just talking nonsense?" Thomas gave a small laugh. "Yeah, that was nice." His eyes held hers a second too long, and she felt the weight of everything unsaid pressing between them. That evening, Adrian invited Evelyn to see a building he'd designed. They stood on the street as the lights illuminated its glass panels, shimmering like a beacon against the night sky. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Adrian slipped his hand into hers. "You inspire me," he said quietly. "You make me want to create more. To be more." Her chest tightened. She wanted to say she felt the same, that he made her feel alive. But the image of Thomas's lonely smile in the cafe lingered in her mind. "Adrian," she said softly, it's complicated." He turned to her fully. "Then let's make it simple. Choose me." Her breath caught, but she couldn't answer. Evelyn needed clarity. She asked Thomas to meet her on the rooftop of her apartment building. The skyline stretched before them, the air cool with the promise of rain. "I feel like I'm losing you," Thomas said before she could speak. Her throat tightened. "You're not. I've been caught up in things." "Things," he repeated, eyes narrowing. "Or someone." She looked away. "Thomas." He stepped closer. "I've loved you for years, Evelyn. I thought you knew." His voice cracked. "I thought maybe you felt the same." Her chest ached. She reached for his hand, but he pulled away. "I can't compete forever," he said, his voice low. Then he left, the sound of the stairwell door slamming echoing in the night. Days passed without a word from Thomas. Evelyn tried calling, but he didn't pick up. She sent messages, each one shorter than the last, but his replies were minimal or non-existent. Meanwhile, Adrian was present, constant. He filled the silence with laughter, with plans for the future, with dreams that pulled her in. But in the quiet moments, when she was alone at her desk or staring out her window, Evelyn's mind always drifted to Thomas. She missed his steady presence, the comfort of knowing he was always there. And for the first time, she wondered what it meant if losing him hurt more than she expected. Evelyn's parents hosted a small dinner one Saturday, inviting Thomas as they always did. He had been like family for years. Evelyn dreaded it, unsure how he would act. When he arrived, he was polite, courteous, but distant. He laughed at her father's jokes, helped her mother clear the table, but avoided Evelyn's gaze. Her mother whispered to her in the kitchen, "Thomas seems quiet tonight." Did something happen? Evelyn forced a smile. "He's just busy with work." But she could feel the truth pressing down. She was the reason for his silence. Adrian invited her to a gallery opening where his firm's latest project was featured. The room buzzed with people, artists, architects, investors. Evelyn felt out of place at first, but Adrian kept her close, introducing her as a writer and someone very important to me. Her cheeks flushed at his words. For that night, she allowed herself to lean into the role, to imagine what life would be like fully by his side. Yet as she stood by the buffet table, she pulled out her phone instinctively. No new messages. Nothing from Thomas. The ache returned, even amid Adrian's dazzling world. One evening, Evelyn found Thomas at the bookstore he frequented. He was sitting in a corner, reading, his glasses slipping down his nose. She approached hesitantly. "Thomas," she whispered. He looked up, expression unreadable. "Evelyn." "I hate this distance," she said. You mean too much to me. He closed the book slowly. Do I? Or do I just mean something convenient while you figure out what you really want? Her chest tightened. That's not fair. What's not fair, he said, voice low, is asking me to stay close while you give your heart to someone else. Tears stung her eyes. She had no reply. That night, Evelyn couldn't sleep. Adrian's kiss replayed in her mind, its passion, its urgency. But alongside it was every small moment with Thomas, shared jokes, quiet mornings, his unwavering loyalty. She realized the truth she had been avoiding. Adrian excited her, but Thomas grounded her. Both were pieces of her heart, but only one could stay. Yet how could she choose without breaking someone? The weight of the decision pressed so heavily that she began avoiding both men, isolating herself in her apartment, drowning in unfinished drafts and cold cups of tea. Evelyn began writing a letter intended for Thomas. She poured her feelings onto the page, how much he meant to her, how safe he made her feel, how terrified she was of losing him. She admitted her confusion, her mistakes, her weakness. But when she finished, she folded it neatly and placed it in a drawer. She couldn't bring herself to send it. Instead, she met Adrian the next day, allowing his energy to sweep her into his world again. But even as she smiled at his stories, she felt the letter burning like a secret in her chest. Thomas sat at his desk late one evening, staring at his phone. He had dialed Evelyn's number 3 times, each time hanging up before it rang. His feelings were tangled love, anger, longing, betrayal. In the end, he let the screen go dark. The next morning, Evelyn noticed his missed call notification, but no voicemail. She almost dialed back, but fear stopped her. What if he said he was done with her? What if she had already lost him? Instead, she messaged Adrian. Coffee? She didn't explain why her smile felt forced when they met. One afternoon, Evelyn stopped by the farmer's market. She didn't expect to see Thomas there, helping a vendor load crates of apples into a truck. He looked up, surprise flashing across his face. Hi, she said carefully. Hey. His voice was guarded. They walked together between stalls, their words cautious. For a brief moment, it felt like old times, discussing favorite breads, comparing ridiculous prices for honey. But when she reached for his arm instinctively, he stepped aside. The space between them felt like a chasm. Adrian sensed her turmoil, but mistook it for hesitation about him. One evening, as they walked by the river, he stopped. Come to Paris with me next month, he said suddenly. Evelyn blinked. Paris? There's a project my firm is involved in. I'll only be there a week. I want you with me. Think of it as an escape. Just us. The idea thrilled her, Paris, with Adrian. Yet the thought of leaving while things with Thomas were unresolved filled her with dread. I'll think about it, she said, forcing a smile. It was Thomas's birthday. Mutual friends planned a surprise gathering at a rooftop lounge. Evelyn almost didn't go, afraid of making things worse, but in the end she couldn't stay away. When Thomas arrived and everyone shouted surprise, his eyes lit up. Evelyn watched from the crowd, her chest aching at how much she missed that light. Later, she approached him with a small gift, a leather notebook. For your ideas, she said softly. He nodded, accepting it. Thanks. His tone was polite, but his eyes betrayed the storm within. She wanted to explain everything, but surrounded by friends, the words stuck. After the party, Evelyn lingered outside. To her surprise, Thomas joined her. The city glowed around them, golden with streetlights. I don't know what you want from me, he admitted, voice rough. Some days it feels like I still matter. Other days, he shook his head. You always matter, she whispered. Then why does it feel like I'm losing you? Her chest tightened. She wanted to say it was Adrian's fault, or hers, or nobody's. But all she managed was, I don't know. Thomas exhaled slowly, shoulders tense. Until you do, I can't keep doing this. Adrian showed up at her apartment the next day with a framed photograph, one he'd taken of her when she wasn't looking, sitting at a cafe table, sunlight on her face. I wanted you to see yourself the way I see you, he said. Evelyn's heart swelled, but at the same time, guilt gnawed at her. Adrian's gestures were grand, breathtaking, but part of her longed for the quiet simplicity of Thomas's presence. She thanked Adrian, kissed him, and tried to believe her heart wasn't being torn in two. Evelyn's best friend, Clara, finally cornered her over lunch. "You've been distracted for weeks," Clara said. "What's going on?" Evelyn hesitated, then confessed. Clara listened patiently before sighing. "You can't keep this up. You're hurting both of them and yourself. You need to decide." "I know," Evelyn whispered. Clara leaned forward. "So who is it you picture beside you 10 years from now?" "That's your answer." The question echoed in Evelyn's mind long after lunch ended. She pictured Thomas's steady hand. She pictured Adrian's fire. The images collided, leaving her more confused than ever. Thomas finally called. "We need to talk," he said. They met at the park near their childhood homes, benches shaded by old oak trees. "I can't keep waiting," Thomas said. His eyes searched hers. "Do you love him?" Evelyn's lips trembled. I don't know." He looked away, jaw clenched. "That's your answer, then. If you don't know after all these years, maybe I was never enough." Tears blurred her vision. She reached for him, but he stood, stepping back. "Goodbye, Evelyn." She watched him walk away, her heart breaking, her voice trapped in her throat. Adrian was ecstatic when Evelyn agreed to Paris. He planned everything: flights, hotels, restaurants with river views. He talked about the city as if it were a stage for their love story. Evelyn tried to match his enthusiasm, but in the quiet moments she thought of Thomas's retreating figure, the sound of his voice saying goodbye. She told herself Paris would help her decide. Paris would make things clear. The morning of the flight, Evelyn wheeled her suitcase through the bustling terminal. Adrian walked beside her, excited, already speaking of plans. But as they reached security, Evelyn froze. Her phone buzzed, a notification from a photo app. A memory from 3 years ago. Her and Thomas, laughing at the diner, pancakes half eaten, faces bright. Her chest tightened painfully. She looked at Adrian, then back at the photo. "Evelyn?" Adrian asked, concerned. She swallowed hard. For the first time, she realized she might not be able to board the plane at all. Evelyn's feet felt glued to the airport floor. Adrian reached for her hand, his voice gentle. "What's wrong?" She forced a smile. "Nothing, just nerves." He kissed her cheek lightly. "It'll be fine once we're in the air." But the whole flight to Paris, Evelyn stared out the window, her reflection overlapping the clouds. She tried to focus on the excitement of travel, the chance of escape, but beneath it all, Thomas's absence gnawed at her. She'd made a choice by boarding the plane, but it didn't feel final. Paris was dazzling. Adrian led her through narrow streets glowing with golden lamps, their laughter echoing along the Seine. They drank wine on balconies, visited galleries, stood beneath the Eiffel Tower like two characters in a storybook. Yet every perfect moment was shadowed by an ache Evelyn couldn't suppress. Adrian noticed her distance. One night, as they strolled across Pont Neuf, he asked quietly, "Are you really here with me, Evelyn? Or is part of you somewhere else?" She froze. I don't know how to answer that." Adrian's face hardened, though his voice remained soft. "Then answer this. Will you ever be entirely mine?" She had no words. In Paris, Evelyn began carrying a small leather notebook, Thomas's birthday gift. She wrote in it each night, pouring out her confusion, her guilt, her longing. Adrian never asked about it, though she caught him glancing at it once, his jaw tightening. On the last night, she wrote, "Adrian is everything I thought I wanted: passion, brilliance, adventure. But why does my heart still ache for Thomas's quiet steadiness? What does that mean about me?" She closed the notebook quickly, as if hiding from herself. Returning home felt surreal. The familiar skyline, the hum of traffic, the corner cafe, it all seemed sharper, heavier. Adrian jumped back into work immediately, leaving Evelyn alone more often. She didn't mind. Solitude gave her space to think. But it also left more room for her heart to drift toward memories of Thomas. She scrolled through old texts, reread his words, felt the echo of his laughter. She almost called him one evening, but stopped herself. What right did she have after choosing Adrian? Clara confronted her again over brunch. "You're back, but you're still miserable," she said flatly. "I'm trying," Evelyn whispered. "No, you're avoiding." Clara leaned forward, eyes sharp. "You keep holding on to both men because you're afraid of losing either. But in the process, you're losing yourself." Evelyn blinked back tears. I don't want to hurt anyone." Clara's voice softened. "Sometimes love hurts, but honesty is kinder than dragging it out." Evelyn ran into Thomas unexpectedly at the bookstore again. He looked different, calmer, perhaps, though guarded. "Hi," she said, tentative. "Hi." He offered a polite smile, nothing more. They stood in awkward silence until she asked, "How are you?" "I'm fine," he replied simply. It stung, his distance, his formality. Once, she'd been the person he shared everything with. Now she felt like a stranger. She wanted to apologize, to explain, but the words tangled inside her. All she managed was, "I miss this." Thomas's eyes flickered, but he only nodded and walked away. Adrian noticed her distraction more clearly now. "Evelyn," he said one evening, "I feel like I only have half of you. The other half is somewhere else, with someone else." She opened her mouth, but he held up a hand. "I don't want pieces of you. I want all of you. If you can't give me that, then tell me now." Tears welled in her eyes. "I don't know how to let go," she admitted. "Then figure it out," Adrian said, his tone sharper than usual. "Because I can't compete with a ghost forever." Evelyn tossed in bed, staring at the ceiling fan whirling above. Her chest felt tight, as though her own indecision was suffocating her. She thought of Adrian's fire, his ambition, the way he looked at her as if she were the only thing that mattered. She thought of Thomas's steadiness, the way he knew her silences, the way his presence always felt like home. She whispered aloud into the dark, "Why can't I choose?" But the silence offered no answer. Desperate to make sense of her feelings, Evelyn began writing her novel. At first, it was about two characters caught between loyalty and passion. But as the pages grew, it became clear it was about herself, Thomas, and Adrian. She poured her confusion into the story, writing late into the night. In her manuscript, she didn't have to decide. Both men remained, each representing a different path. On paper, she could keep them both. But real life was not paper. Adrian came to her apartment one evening, frustration etched on his face. "Evelyn, I can't do this anymore. I need to know where we stand. Are we building something together, or are you still clinging to Thomas?" Her heart pounded. She opened her mouth, but he continued, "If you want me, then prove it. If not, let me go." Evelyn's hands trembled. For the first time, she saw clearly. Her choice could no longer be delayed. Both men deserved an answer, and her silence had already caused too much pain. She nodded slowly. "I'll tell you soon. I promise." But inside, she wondered if she was brave enough to keep that promise. Clara came over one evening, unannounced, and found Evelyn surrounded by scattered manuscript pages. "You're drowning in your own story," Clara said gently. "But life isn't a manuscript. You can't write both endings and hope they coexist." Evelyn buried her face in her hands. "If I choose one, I lose the other. I don't want to lose anyone." Clara knelt beside her. "You've already lost Thomas once. And Adrian's slipping too. The longer you wait, the more you'll lose both." Evelyn looked at her friend, heart pounding. For the first time, she knew Clara was right. That night, Evelyn dialed Thomas's number. He answered after several rings. "Evelyn." His voice was cautious. "I need to see you," she whispered. A pause. "Why no?" "Because I can't move forward without telling you everything." Silence stretched, then Thomas sighed. "Tomorrow." The diner. Noon. When the call ended, Evelyn collapsed onto her bed, trembling. Tomorrow could change everything. The diner was just as it always had been: sticky tables, chipped mugs, the smell of frying bacon. Thomas was already there, arms folded, expression unreadable. Evelyn sat across from him, heart in her throat. "I'm sorry," she began. "For everything. For hurting you. For being selfish." Thomas's gaze softened slightly. "Why no?" "Because I realized losing you hurt more than I expected. More than I can stand. His breath caught. And Adrian? Her lips trembled. He's amazing, but he's not you. For the first time in months, Thomas's eyes held warmth again. Are you sure? She nodded, tears spilling. Yes. That evening, Evelyn went to Adrian's apartment. He greeted her with relief, but it faded when he saw her expression. Don't, he said softly. I can see it in your eyes. Her chest ached. I'm sorry, Adrian. You made me feel alive in ways I didn't know I could. But my heart belongs somewhere else. His jaw clenched, but he nodded slowly. Thomas. She nodded, tears brimming. Yes. Adrian looked away, voice quiet. Then go. Don't apologize for loving him. Just don't ever look back. She wanted to hug him, to thank him, but she knew he wouldn't want that. So she left, the sound of the door closing behind her like an ending. The weeks that followed were fragile. Evelyn and Thomas began cautiously, as if relearning each other. Sunday brunches returned, quieter at first, then filled with laughter again. She felt the ground beneath her feet steadier than it had been in months. Yet guilt lingered. One evening, she confessed, sometimes I still think of Paris. Of Adrian. Does that make me awful? Thomas shook his head. It makes you human. You don't erase someone who mattered overnight. But you chose me, and that's enough. His forgiveness was gentle, and in that moment, Evelyn knew she had chosen the right path. News reached her weeks later. Adrian had accepted a long-term project overseas. Clara mentioned it over coffee, her tone careful. He's leaving for Singapore. 2 years, maybe more. Evelyn nodded, heart aching quietly. She wished him happiness, wished she could tell him that part of her would always care. But she also knew letting go was the kindest thing she could do. That night, she placed the framed photograph Adrian had given her in a box, tucking it away. Not forgotten, but no longer in sight. Evelyn completed her novel. The story of a woman caught between two loves had transformed into something else, a story about courage, choices, and learning to live with imperfection. When she handed the first draft to Thomas, she said, "It's messy, but it's mine." He smiled, flipping through the pages. Like you, like us. She laughed, tears stinging her eyes, and kissed him across the table. Months later, Evelyn and Thomas began a new tradition. Friday night walks through the city. They would stop for coffee, share stories from their week, and watch the lights flicker across the skyline. One night, as they stood on a bridge, Evelyn whispered, "Thank you for waiting for me, for not giving up, even when I deserved it." Thomas wrapped his arm around her. "I almost did, but some things are worth the fight." She leaned into him, heart steady at last. A year later, Evelyn received a postcard in the mail. Paris. The handwriting was Adrian's. "I hope you're happy. Truly. Build something beautiful with him." Her eyes blurred as she tucked the postcard into her notebook. She smiled, a mix of sorrow and gratitude. Adrian would always be a chapter in her story, but not the ending. She closed the notebook and slipped her hand into Thomas's as he joined her on the couch. "What's that?" he asked. "Just a reminder," she said softly, "that I'm exactly where I'm meant to be." The city still pulsed with its endless rhythm, traffic, laughter, neon glow. But for Evelyn, life had settled into a quieter heartbeat. She sat at the cafe where it had all begun, laptop open, Thomas across from her with his coffee. He glanced up, catching her gaze, and smiled the smile she had once taken for granted. And in that moment, she knew home wasn't a place or a passion or even a dream. It was a person. The storm had passed. The shadows had lifted. And in their place remained something steady, something true. Love.